like I said,
it's like advanced is the thing that works, right?
Right. Yes. So anytime you're ready, or okay. An inevitability curve is a line that connects the present to some point in the future that will come to pass. At that point in the future, we'll all be able to look back together and we'll see the bumps and rises, and the reasons for those will be apparent. In this series, we're going to look at individual technical topics, try to put their current state in the context of their own histories, and with that knowledge, see if we can put boundaries on possible futures. With me today is Casey Ellis, the founder and CTO?
CSO, Chief Strategy Officer.
Chief Strategy Officer, my favorite title, of Bugcrowd. Thanks, Casey, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. So, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are right now. Where did Bugcrowd come from? What forces were driving you to take that first step?
Yeah, geez, there's a lot of them. I mean, from a backstory standpoint, I grew up as a hacker, moved across into pen testing as pretty much my first kind of career move. Did that for a period and got into solutions architecture and sales, did a stint as a chief security officer, and then broke bad and became an entrepreneur. So like that's the kind of the DNA that I'm bringing into this. With Bugcrowd, there was a couple of different things going on. I think really the two reasons I started the company, one was to change the operating environment for hackers that work in good faith, because growing up, we're at a point now, I think, where it's better understood that hacking is a dual use thing. It's not inherently good or evil, it's just really powerful. And the scary story gets told more than the good one, so everyone just thinks it's bad. And that was kind of where we came from. So I wanted to change the environment for hackers that are helpful, so that we can really operate as the internet's immune system, right? Doing that through Bugcrowd and through Disclose.io, which is a policy standardization project, and seeing things change like the CFAA and DMCA and so on, some of the laws around hacking. So that's one part. The other part is that the adversary is distributed. There's lots of people, we're all here because of a creative adversary. If they didn't exist, this conference wouldn't exist. We could just get on with building things and have a utopian internet existence, and that's not how it works. So the thing in my head was creativity is always going to be a part of solving the cybersecurity problem. It's not just a technology solution. There's this creative gap between what we're capable of technically and what the bad guys are innovating ahead on. How do we counteract that? How do we provide some sort of balance to the idea of the resourcing and the economics that's available to the adversary and put it in the hands of defenders? So yeah, those were the problems that I was sitting around thinking about that were kind of annoying me. Probably another part is just looking at the pen test industry. One person versus a million is going to fail because of the math, but then on top of that, you've got no kind of guarantee on their output, all those different things. I think that industry, still today, but definitely then, didn't have any need to disrupt itself. So at the end of the day, we're all, as security practitioners, making money off it and doing all those different things, but because we're not doing as good a job as we can, the user ends up suffering. So those are all the things in the pot that kind of came together, the light bulb moments. How can we take all of the latent potential out there in the researcher community and connect it in with this unmet demand, both at that point in time in 2012, but also in perpetuity into the future.
So if I understand what you did then, really, you turned the independent hacker consultant into a single plane so that organizations can come to one place and not, because you and I have done this work, as you say, pen test, red team or whatever, but and you get really, really good people, but it's hit and miss. And any individual organization has, a 50-50 chance at best.
That's right.
And so you made that into something really operational.
Yeah, collaborative contribution and collaborative consumption. Crowdsourcing to me has always been a compelling way to solve these types of problems where it's a white space, unknown thing you're trying to find the answer to. Crowdsourcing is, to me, one of the most logical ways to solve questions like that, and that doesn't just express itself in security, right? So, the idea of, as you say, creating a plane that allows for collaborative contribution and collaborative consumption around the nature of the problems that we're trying to solve in security, to me it just made sense. And I think, over the past 11 years, the market's kind of caught onto that. To the podcast, where does it go from here? I'm sure we can talk about that, but that's how it was designed.
Well, and where it's gotten to right now.
Sure.
Forgive me if I haven't got it right, but
future.
but the present, as I understand it, is a lot of Gen AI, right? And if I look at your website and so forth, and I understand this plane, you've got AI, is RSAI this year,
RSA.
right? Everything's AI everywhere. But I like this application because it's saying, all right, you can use AI to do a lot of this work and sort of narrow the field or whatever, and then apply it to this, to the crowdsourced research community.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So you're accelerating this group's cycle without relying on the new tool.
That's exactly right, and in a lot of ways, I sort of view, so when I talk about AI, when it first dropped, like we've been working with the generative AI folk, the foundational models, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, others, pretty much since just before ChatGPT dropped, because that's when all the PhD data nerds inside those companies are like, oh, we should start to think about security. And obviously that was good timing to do that. I think any later and it wouldn't have been that great. But yeah, we've been working in that space pretty much since it kind of announced itself to the internet, right? And there's obviously a lot of things that are very unique about this new kind of age of AI that we're in. I think the power and the accessibility broadens the available or the potential pool of users. You've got like access to capability in the hands of people with different motivations to what you'd normally expect, right? We're just kind of going and spread that right out. But in other ways, it's no different to any other form of automation. You think about some of the things that people do from a hacking standpoint, like prior to Metasploit getting developed, you coded all that stuff by hand. And all of a sudden there's a framework. What does that do? It makes everyone more efficient. It broadens the pool of people that are able to do certain things. People get to use that and get comfortable with it, and it kind of raises the tide. And then all of a sudden we're thinking about innovating the next part, right? Like I see AI as a much bigger jump than that, but its nature is fundamentally the same, I think.
Well, it's this sort of evolutionary cruxes, where things will work to a certain point, and the change comes along, and it like you say, it's not about solving everything, but that old model doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And with my thoughts, you and I've discussed this inevitability curve thing, that I've been focused on since '92, right? I started with trying to convince my boss that everyone's going to get on the internet.
Yeah.
I finally had to say, look, let's just assume I'm right for a second. There's this spot up in the future, we're here, a line connects the two, and it does. And now every time I talk to John Alsop, hi John, I bring that up again. Right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Stochastic analysis, you and I have talked about this, I think that approach to futurism is a methodology that we share. And to me, what's happened with Bugcrowd is kind of evidence of the success of that model. Like obviously there's my own kind of contribution to that, right?
Sure.
But that approach, I think, is the thing that's actually enabled this to happen. And it can be applied to a lot of different things, so it's cool.
Well, and so in looking forward, communicating about this episode before this, I'm thinking out loud about in my own mind, so it didn't talk it through with you here. But it seems that that's that first part, right? Where it was good for the industry, good for all of us. A lot of people got jobs and training out of it, working with company ABC.
Yep.
But once you have that sort of plain approach, and again, whether it's you or something, it's no longer really viable. It'll just take you longer, cost more, increase your cost, and your competitors do this new thing, have lower costs, and the nutrient gradient will draw survivors in that direction.
Sure.
And with all the conversation about AI, and again looking at what you're doing with AI.
Yep.
It seems to me that, so the inevitable futures, and to be clear, we're not talking about just a straight line, we're just saying beyond this point, probably not going to be there. Beyond it,
at what point does it break?
Lane in here somewhere.
100%, yep.
So putting those two together, it's like, going forward, if I just want to insource my entire security staff, I'm not going to crowdsource anything, I'm going to hire all the people, I'm going to maintain them all, unless there's some really rich environment to support that, that's not necessarily a winning strategy. And just to say the elephant in the room, for all of us talking to each other, it's like everybody's saying that AI is going to solve everything. So if you go that path, say I don't need people anymore, I'll just use AI. That's probably not there either.
No, that's 100% right. I think going back to kind of where you're starting off on that one, I view security as fundamentally a marketing, a design, and an economics problem, right? So marketing in terms of awareness of the need to do it, design in terms of the need for it to be simple and low cost, otherwise you just won't. And the economics piece is really about this balance of resourcing and skill and talent and all the different things that you do on the defensive side to counter what's being applied on the offensive side. And there's a back and forth, like it's a constant cat and mouse game in that sense. Like where I see AI shift, and this is a prediction I made a year and a bit ago. We're starting to see it. It hasn't really played out yet, but it's definitely heading in this direction. That sort of bad guys do a thing, good guys react, bad guys do a thing, good guys react. That's how we've done this entire time. Like, we're led by them. They're the ones innovating and kind of setting the agenda for us as defenders, right? A byproduct of AI and the accessibility and the power of it is that it decreases the cycle time on that. So the bad, good, bad, good, bad, good. And what I wonder about, what I think about is, does that kind of back and forth speed up to the rate where we just have to change the game? We have to like literally think about, how are we approaching this? Is this rational in terms of how we're thinking about deploying capital into cybersecurity, all those different things? Is it now time to think about changing the rules of the game on our end in order to basically account for that? So, yeah.
Right, and because there's, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this doesn't sound too negative, but we're all, in a commercial context, we have two adversaries. We have the people that want to hurt us, bad guys or whatever,
yep.
And then we have our competitors, we're competing for market space.
Yep.
And I like where, the capital aspect of it. I think a lot of the marketing we need to do as security people is help business people understand.
Yeah.
That this is not just about encrypting your thing from the UFOs, but it's like if your costs for doing this are higher than your competitors' cost, that will be unsustainable.
Yes.
And for a show like RSA and a market like ours, where we're coming up with catchwords, some of which don't really count. Some of them do. Some of them mark these cruxes. And I think this is one of these where the cost model just, to have the same level of protection year to year going to cost you so much more.
Yeah. Well,
unless you embrace the automation intelligently, right?
Exactly. Embracing, and this is, going back to the actual applications of AI that we're seeing, in the wild, like how we're using it internally. And there's been a ton of talks around this over the past couple of days, and the B-sides over the weekend as well. The idea of using AI for SOC automation, for rule writing, for translation. Like, we're using it because the crowdsource community is global, and not everyone is English as a first language, right? So their ability to communicate is going to vary depending on the individual. Like, we need to get the information from them and be able to give it to someone who has to pass it on to the fixers. That's a cleaning process, right? So using AI to accelerate that's just one example of how we're using it. But it's grunt work. You sort of hear what I'm getting at there. None of it is like, go off and hack the Gibson for us because you're a robot that can do that. It's like, no, the grunt work that humans ultimately have the ability to not do. Right. Now, like, you work from that kind of vantage point, just work your way up, I think.
Yeah, we don't really like doing it. It takes a lot of time, and it costs as much as doing things we are good at.
Anything that a human's doing that looks like a thing that should be done by a computer, like hard repetition, like processing, all those different things, like those are the candidates, and that's the starting point. And that's what it's good at too. Like, this is where these technologies are actually really capable. If you flip it upside down and say, okay, I want you to be as creative as a skilled hacker, it's going to fail because it doesn't have that flair, it doesn't have that nuance, it doesn't have the contextual understanding, all those different things that make humans good at this. Like, it's not there. Yeah. So, all right, bottom up.
Bottom up, exactly. Well, thanks for everything you do. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for having me. Cheers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks.